So what's wrong with boys and men today? Why are so many of our sons in this country growing up to be the perpetrators of horrifying violence? Shooting rampages are becoming commonplace, with wives, children, and innocent bystanders getting caught in the deadly crossfire. What is happening inside the mind of the American male as Crosstalk continues now? Welcome back to Crosstalk, everybody. Okay, well, we gave you that breaking news from Tim Russert. Now we're going to get back to our discussion, where we're posing the question that's really based on this headline. Coming out of Newsweek magazine, should hit the stores tomorrow. This is Susan Faludi. She's writing a new book that's called Stiffed: Why Men Should Get a Break. She writes about this kind of male meltdown where men are somehow caught, they're stuck. They're stuck in the mud after years of being conditioned one way. The whole notion of manhood is now more confused, more complicated, and men are struggling basically to keep up. This half hour we'll continue our discussion, what some are calling the male meltdown in America. But before we begin, we want to remind you that we're trying something new here at Crosstalk NBC starting today, and we will continue. We'll be taking your phone calls. That's the number, 888-MSNBC-USA. Still also taking your emails at crosstalk@msnbc.com. We'll get to those calls in just a minute. Alan Lipman, let me go back to you about some of the issues where we left off.
Sure.
Talking specifically about control being asserted where there is no control, or losing a sense of control.
Right. Well, I think that we have traditionally given, in the past, control to men in this culture, and it was a relatively non-controversial issue. And I do think that now many men do feel, should I control? Is that much control too much? Mm-hmm. Should I be passive? Should I be active? But I think, again, we really need to focus in on the question, does that double bind that Faludi, I think, correctly points out that guys don't know how to act these days with regard to those issues of control, is it likely to make them violent? And I think the answer to that is sometimes yes, sometimes no. It could equally be asserted that that position, that double bind of should I be passive or should I be more aggressive, could lead a lot of men to back off. And by the way, in my own work and practice, I've seen that as an equal result. To get the sense of why people are aggressive, that's one little piece. We need to focus, as some have pointed out, on really what's happening inside the family. And the fact that we aren't giving folks, like we just saw with Alexander, means to cope with aggressive feelings. We aren't teaching people how to communicate about them, how to talk about them, and how to deal with them. And I think that's really where the answer lies. Faludi, I think, is, while raising an important topic, just kind of skirting the issue,
All right, we're going to get to a couple of phone calls here. We have a caller on the line from Florida. What is your name?
My name is Paula.
Paula, go ahead.
Hi. I'm finishing up a program in clinical psychology at this time, and I just want to comment on the way that I feel in the context of the gender differences. I feel that I haven't really gotten a good education in terms of, just as you were speaking, about how do you talk to men differently than to women in psychology. I feel that we're so concerned with, kind of equality that we're kind of losing track of the importance of differences. I feel that psychology has become very feminized, and with that, I think that kind of our current standards seem to be much more catered towards women than towards men. And
thank you for your call, Paula. Mary, is that a problem? There's been so much work done, especially among women, in the women's movement, that men have somehow, as I said before, just remained stuck.
Well, I think one problem is that there is a tendency, it's sort of not PC, politically correct, to talk about the biologically based differences between males and females, and I think the evidence is increasingly pointing to the fact that there are biologically based differences, and we need to start off with that. I mean, for example, boys as a group are more concerned with hierarchy and dominance and control. They're more impulsive. They're more easily frustrated from a very young age, and there's reason to believe that that's biologically based. Also, you know, in these schoolyard killings, at least 2 of the boys were diagnosed with ADHD. Now, that's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Boys are something like 5 to 7 times as likely to suffer from that as are girls, and the same with a whole series of conditions, that learning disability, a mild mental retardation, Asperger's syndrome, because of the XY gene. So there are millions of boys that are at really high risk of violent behavior because of these conditions, in addition to the fact that they're already at higher risk.
Let me get in another phone call. Harold on the line from New York. Harold, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Nice to be speaking with you.
Likewise.
I'm going to suggest something over here. I'm just watching your program and I see male meltdown. Why don't we suggest a parent meltdown? When you're born, the pediatrician, whoever, checks you over to see if the baby's good. I've had a personal incident where my father taught me to curse. My mother was blind. I was a surrogate husband. I had to go and resort to what everybody should, professional help, like Mr. Alan, whatever his name is looking on the TV here.
Lipman.
I happen to be along his lines. I have a great psychiatrist who took me so far, and I'm now a gentle human being.
Yeah.
I'm not...
But I mean, you know, I understand what you're saying, Harold, but I mean, we can't start blaming our parents for everything, right? I mean, at some point we got to...
I could certainly blame my father, who's not here today, for teaching me while he's driving a car as a New York City cab driver, and I myself was, cursing at other drivers. Anger. Harbored anger. At that point, he was advised by his physician to take a rest. He should have gone to get help, and he would have served as a male role model for me.
Harold, thanks very much for the call.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Look, you know, I think what you said is very important, that we can't simply blame our parents, say that it's our parents' fault. That is wrong. But one of the key points that gets lost here when we talk about the family is that there is a difference between explanation and blame. If we're going to understand this problem, Miriam is right, there are clearly some biological factors involved, although the extent to which they're involved, the jury is out. It still remains the general consensus in our field that the environment plays the largest role, and the most critical environment is our parents. We need to look at the way in which parental environment affects us as human beings in order to be able to change the problem, never mind blame, because we're all children at some point.
Alexander, but here's a good question. Go ahead, Jack. Is that you? Jeffrey, rather. Go ahead.
The legal system, the legal system, though, affects parental involvement, and I hope that's not something we're missing. Now, there was one caller who stated that the mental health profession is very sensitive toward women's issues. Well, the problem is the legal system, the judicial system, is very sensitive to the issues of mothers, and I don't believe very sensitive to the issues of fathers. So we have a system that at times pushes fathers away, and when it pushes fathers away, you have a lot of boys out there with no role model, no structure, and a lot of these boys turn to gangs because gang leaders become surrogate father figures, and that's where we have the beginning of violence.
Alexander, I want to pose a question to you because I'm curious about something. Do you and do your friends have, let me put the question this way, does your father, do your friends' fathers give a kind of multifaceted role model to you? In other words, do they give you the idea that there's different ways to be a man?
Certainly from my father, yes. I have to say he's been a great role model for me in the fact that he's not overly aggressive at times, and he does share what he feels with me about things I do. And if I do have a problem, I can go with him and talk with him. My friends' fathers, some of them, they're all different. Some of them are screaming around the house. Some of them are very understanding. So there's a real big range.
Right. All right, let me take a break here. We'll come back with more of your phone calls and more from our guests, your emails too. Male meltdown, that's the question. That's our topic, our focus. We're coming right back. Don't go away.